Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to the channel. If you're new to the channel, I typically cover pretty relevant stock market analysis, trade ideas that I see in the market, and just give my general read on the different indices and where I think markets are heading. But for this video, what I've started doing once a week or so is covering subscriber stock picks. So I ask subscribers to leave comments in some of the videos on stock analysis, analysis on individual stocks that they want to see, or ETFs or whatever. And so in this video, I'm going to go through that. Thanks for joining. Leave me a thumbs up and let's get started. There's quite a few to go through, so the video might run a little bit long. I'm going to try to run kind of quickly through each one so I can at least give an analysis on a lot of these. Let's get into it. Okay, Citrix Systems is the first one. Here's the weekly chart. We had a big negative divergence right here on the RSI in the weekly. You can see as price, and I'll go ahead and draw the price. This is not a trend line that I'm drawing, but rather just showing you the price movement. Price right here, you can see hit a high in the RSI, and then the momentum completely dropped off on the weekly as the weekly chart and weekly prices continued to make higher highs. Since that time, and this negative divergence was displayed, really it's played out now for a drop of about 30% from high to low on this weekly chart. Here's the daily. The negative divergence was cleanly intact right here when it ran up and tagged this level right up in here, and since that time again it's dropped about 30%. So the negative divergence worked. It's forecasted the drop. The drop's already taken place. I don't see a bullish divergence here on the daily showing me that the selling is finished. And if you look here on the hourly, usually the bullish divergence starts to show up first on the hourly. And you can see it is starting to show up a little bit on the hourly, where momentum is just starting to kind of level out and stop dropping on the hourly. And yet we have continued lower prices. So we're starting to see some bullish divergence showing up on the hourly. That's not a buy signal. That's not a buy trigger. You want to wait for trigger levels and trend lines to break. But starting to see some bullish divergence showing up. An idea here that I see on the daily chart for Citrix. You've got a couple reactions creating this downtrend line here, and if maybe we get a little bit of a pop next week and then it sells off down into this 116 area, potentially all the way down to 112, 113, somewhere right in that zone, and that might put in a bullet. On the daily we might pop up and then come down and put in a higher low on the daily, creating bullish divergence, and that might be the bottom. Why I think that might be the bottom, if you look here on the daily chart, here's your 2009 lows, and you've got a little bit of a trend line where you had a reaction here, and then you came up and had another reaction here. Here's another reaction there, and it looks like we're heading down towards that kind of long-term bull market support line in this stock. So that's the area I'd probably be interested if it gets down there. Nvidia. All right, so Nvidia. Negative divergence on the weekly. You can see momentum has been moving lower, although we've been making higher prices right here on the weekly. So negative divergence is intact there. On the daily, it's not quite there. You can see we made this high right here, and then this we didn't make quite higher prices right here. So the momentum is lower than previous, but so is the price. So it's not diverging from price. It is the momentum is doing exactly, or the prices are doing kind of exactly what the momentum is saying it should be doing. So no divergence there. You do have this broken trend line right here that we've been walking up for a while. We broke it. We almost came in for a back test. I was looking for a full back test. So the thing is maybe Nvidia reports earnings. They report good earnings. Most likely they're going to report good earnings. They've been doing pretty well as a company. Maybe, and this is all speculation until I see an opportunity in price. I can only speculate, but maybe they get a pop all the way up to this trend line, way up here. around 624 or something like that, that would create a new higher price and most likely a divergent high. That would be the area I would be looking to short. But in general, I would be looking more to the short side on this one because this trend line right here has been broken. Look at volume as well dropping off. You can see volume right there is just completely dropping off as price is continuing to kind of grind higher. So you've got volume diverging from the price as well. Zoom, I cover this one a lot because I'm obviously looking to short this one. Big negative divergence in the daily chart. You can see here momentum is fading while price had continued to make new higher highs. So I'm just waiting for some sort of a trend line break. On the hourly, there was a short-term trend line that I had marked out. Seems like it must have gone away, but it was right up like there, and then that broke, and then there's only been selling. But what I'm waiting for is the more major trend line to break right here. So on the daily chart, you can see this is the trend line that the price channel Zoom was in. It got outside of the price channel a little bit, but it's created negative divergence in doing that. So I'm looking for a breakdown of this major trend line around 473, 474. Obviously, it depends on when it gets to the trend line what the price will actually be. But I'm bearish. I'm just waiting for an entry, waiting for a trigger. There's no trigger right now. This thing can continue to move higher. Until I get the trigger, I'm going to watch it. All right, Nio, Nio, another electric automaker. This is what I see. Big negative divergence here on the daily chart. Here's your trend line that it's been walking up. It's still above trend. So the negative divergence is there, but we don't have a breakdown of price support. So when this breaks down, you get some sort of a sell signal. That's your trigger. That's when I'd be looking. Profit targets for this one are pretty obvious. You got gaps right there at 944, and you got another gap below right around $8. Obviously, I always step in a little bit early and cover. If I'm short, I don't wait for it to get all the way down to the level. I step in early. Here's one, Plug. Negative divergence on the daily right here. It's not that steep, but it is there. And the daily has just been walking up this trend line. So you can see we're closing right about at support right now on the daily. So what I'd be looking for is an impulsive sell signal or breakdown of this support line on the daily chart. When I went to the hourly, I don't see any negative divergence in the hourly. You can see momentum just continued higher here. Momentum or price moved higher. And we never really got a divergent high in price. So maybe what's in store, and this is, again, is just speculation because I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe we bounce off this support and can make a new high above here. And if we can make a new high soon above this 1904, it looks like, then that would most likely be a divergent high on the hourly chart as well. So again, the thing to look for on this one is really just going back to the daily and the impulsive breakdown or sell signal. Until then, it's still bullish. However, one way that if I'm long a trade and I'm just riding a trend, I usually start looking at taking profit or exiting or getting it ready, at least tightening stops when you start to establish negative divergence. So negative divergence, isn't always there in an uptrend, but it does show up eventually, and that's your cue to start tightening stops, start taking profit, etc. Peloton, I cover this one in a lot of my videos. I am short Peloton, got short right up here. We do not have negative divergence on the daily chart, but it was very clean on the hourly. And so right here is when we got negative divergence. Right there is where it really started to establish. So this was a divergent high, another divergent high. Now we had the trend line break. Here's your trend line. There's your sell signal, and we've started to move down. So I think we're heading down to 103 to 105, depending on when it gets there, of course, down to that trend line, and then we'll watch to see what happens down there. But for now, that, I believe, is going to be support. Netflix, this is an hourly chart. We did have negative divergence. Right there is really where it started to get established. So right in this area was a divergent high, another divergent high, but that's played out now for this hourly chart move. You can see the negative divergence played out from high to low for a drop of about 15%. So that's kind of now started to play out, and we're starting to see some bullish divergence all the way down here. You can see it right there where momentum is making a new higher low, and price right there made a slightly lower low. So bullish divergence on the hourly tells me that we're probably going to get a little pop. We're also at some support here in Netflix. You can see going all the way back to this trend line right there. We've been walking up it. We're right there now, and so I could see us moving higher from here. We're above trend on this daily chart, so and near support. It's more of a long at this area. Etsy here, I obviously shorted this one. I've been covering that in many videos. Got short, right up here for a nice gain. From high to low, that was a drop of about 15%, so that was good. I think we're having a kickback rally right up to resistance, and then we'll start to roll over more. I still see negative divergence here on the daily chart, still intact. Nothing's changed on the bigger picture daily chart. Still looks like we're heading lower. On the hourly, I don't see any bullish divergence. Yeah, momentum is moving up. You can see obviously momentum's moving up, but so is price. So it's not diverging. Usually what you want to see for a reversal in trend is you want to see momentum moving up and price still moving down. All right, and that's not taking place. So this to me just looks like a bear flag. I think we're going to, continue the breakdown, something like that, and then we'll take shop here on the daily chart. Big negative divergence right there. You can see price. It really put in the negative divergence right here, where price started to move higher, continued a little bit higher while momentum was really fading. And here's your trend line. We broke the trend, so a sell signal took place right there. Back tests are opportunities to add, and I don't see any change from this. I think this still continues lower. On the hourly, I see, we're bouncing a little bit over the last few hours, but momentum indicates a bounce as well. So there was no divergence. It's just momentum moving up, price moving up. But that daily chart still shows that negative divergence. So to me, this just looks like a little bit of bounce on a Friday. And then, I think we're going to continue lower. I see a bigger trend line all the way down here at 491. Maybe we get down there. I don't know. That's quite a ways down. That's a drop of 50%. But of course, these high flyers, they've ran like crazy. So, from the low in March, this one's actually back in 2016. But from 2016, it's up 5,000%. So, and again, I use logarithmic scaling, so that's why it looks a little different, but this is still showing the percentage gain. I don't see a really great entry, a short entry. Now, a new divergent high, if it can pop above the previous high right here at 1,146, if it can pop up there, that might be an entry for a short position, but I would be looking to the short side, in my opinion. Here's CAT. I don't see negative divergence here on the daily. You can see momentum has been moving higher right there, and price has been moving higher. So no negative divergence on the daily, but it's starting to show up on the hourly. So usually it shows up on the hourly first, then oftentimes it'll work its way to the daily, and then, sometimes it doesn't go to the daily. Sometimes you just get a short little down move, but when it shows up on the hourly, that's usually good for at least a short-term pullback. And it is here on the hourly. You can see right there, momentum's been moving lower, and yet price, moving higher here, a new divergent high here. So what I'd be looking for is a breakdown of this shelf right here, 166.84, some sort of an impulsive breakdown. And I think that's probably good. You got really a real thin zone right in here. So I think that's probably good for a move down to about 148.58. And I get that level coming all the way back here. That was previous resistance back here in November of 2019, January 2020. So I think we come back down and test that, maybe build some support there. So I think that is good. But again, you need that sell signal. Until you get that, this thing could continue to go higher. FDX, and the reason why a lot of these are short trades is because the market's gone crazy. It's ran up a lot. So you're seeing a lot of negative divergences across the board. You see this kind of stuff when you have these moves. Now, if the market fell a lot, you'd probably see a lot of bullish divergences, positive divergences, but it's not the case. So FDX, no negative divergence in the daily. So momentum's been up, price is going up. I don't see anything there. However, in the hourly, same thing as CAT, starting to show up right there. It really did start to show up right about there. This was a divergent high. If this turns down, if we move up and make a new higher price and then it turns down again, that will be a continuation of the negative divergence here on the hourly chart. So this one, again, you got to wait for price support to break down. It's, I'd have to probably tighten it up, but yeah, it's right about there. There's your trend line on the hourly chart. Nice clean uptrend line. Several wicks. You can see how the wicks dip below, but there's another tag of it. So I'd be looking for a breakdown and a close below that trend line. A nice pause, a nice confirming breakdown. Impulsive, the better. Until then, it's above trend, moving higher. It can move up and make a new higher high, putting in a potentially extension of the negative divergence. Got to wait for that breakdown, but I would be looking for it. UPS, clean negative divergence on the daily chart. Again, when it's on the daily, it has higher priority. It has bigger implications. But here's your negative divergence here on the daily. You can see price continued higher like that, basically. And momentum is fading. So, and it's probably on the hourly as well. It's on the hourly as well. There's your negative divergence right there on the hourly. Momentum dropping off while price keeps popping, making slightly new higher highs. Marginal new higher highs. Here's the levels I see. We've got this little level right here, 171.58. You can see we had a reaction right there where it held as resistance right in here, and then impulsively broke out. Nice green impulsive candle breaking above resistance. I like to see that. Then you come down, test it as support. It's held as support. A breakdown of that level sets this thing in motion to the downside. That's what I'd be looking for a sell signal on this one. And back to the daily chart, clear and obvious target would be the gap fill right down here at 124. So that is a drop of about 30%, 27%. That is the play that I would be looking for, or the trade that I would be looking for. There's another level. You can see it right there, though. You do have another level, kind of another shelf of support right in there. Yeah, somewhere right in here. So 156, 157, somewhere right there. Probably get a reaction in there, maybe a bounce up. But the longer term trade or the swing trade would be a gap fill. So that's what I'd be looking at. I'd probably take a little profit at that first level, maybe let it bounce up, add back, let it roll over till gap fill. That'd be the trade. Carvana, I neglected covering Carvana, but I was short Carvana. And you can see here that it entered the gap. Here's what we got on Carvana, basically. Negative divergence still intact. That hasn't changed. There's no bullish divergence that I'm seeing on the daily. So bigger picture is the trend is still looking down. On the hourly, we still have, there's nothing changed either on the hourly. Still, negative divergence. We entered the gap right here at 201.50. And just came back in for a back test. A slight overshoot, but I suspect they'll probably gap this thing back within resistance Monday morning. And that will be most likely, it'll most likely start to make a move back down to fill the gap. Gap sits there at about 173.84. So that's the play. A move down to that. eBay, I don't see negative divergence. You just have momentum moving down. You have price moving down. So it's downtrending on the daily chart. Recently, you can see on the daily we've had momentum moving up, but price has been moving up. So price is moving with momentum, but there it is on the hourly. You can see here's your divergent high. When you made lower momentum right there and a higher price, that signaled that, at least on the hourly, that we're going to move down. We've just, looks like we're extending that, not really the divergence, but the momentum is now down and continuing the down move, but it was forecasted in this high price right here that we were going to probably move down. This looks like your most near-term support level, right about 51.86. You can see we had a little spike right there, held a little cluster right here. It's kind of choppy, likes to chop through the level. It's not that clean, a little dip around it. So it's kind of a range. If it breaks that level and it's convincing, then we're probably going to come. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure on this one. We've already done the gap fill. There was this big gap here, but it already filled. So I'm not exactly sure. I don't have an opinion too much on this one, actually. BLPR, I don't see any negative divergence on the daily, really. Nothing that's that prominent. Maybe you could justify that it's right there slightly, but it's not super prominent. This thing's obviously been in an uptrend. For the most part, stocks are going to be in an uptrend, especially in this market. You got to trend something like that, basically. I could probably tighten that up, but it's basically right in there. On the hourly, it's starting to show up a little bit. You've got, let me get rid of this line here. On the hourly, you've got, a little bit of negative divergence starting to show up there where we started to make kind of higher prices, but the momentum was diverging. That's now started to react lower. We'll probably head down to the trend line, 1240, something like that, 13, depending on when we get there. And then, there's no negative divergence in the daily, so probably going to head down there and hold support would be expected. Someone asked me to evaluate work. Guys, it doesn't have enough history. It's hard for me to really give you guys a good read without enough history. So this one I'm just going to stay out of and say I don't have an opinion. UVXY, I've been looking at this one. I've got a little bit of a long position in volatility, looking for some spike action. It hasn't showed up yet, and that's pretty common with these VIX things. They just drift lower, and then they spike higher randomly or whatever. So what I've got, though, is starting to get some bullish divergence right here in the UVX. You can see, obviously, we keep making lower prices, although momentum's starting to get bullish. The last time I really saw this was, was right about here. This is a bullish divergence right here, and you can see it showed up right about there. I was looking at this. There's where the bullish divergence showed up, and that was about the low, and you had some spike action. Then, obviously, the huge rip. I don't expect us to get this huge rip, but I could see prices moving up to, 45, $46, something like that. Maybe not that much now. Maybe we only go up to $28, something like that. But bullish divergence is showing up. We just need to see that break, that break above, that some sort of impulsive break up. I would look at $19. A break over 19 is probably going to set us up for a move higher. Run here, negative divergence. It's been intact. I've pointed it out in several videos in the past. Here's your trend line right here. Looks like it, and this did exactly what I was saying it was good. I thought it was going to do. I had this trend line right up here on the hourly. If you go to the hourly, you'll see how I marked it out. So here's your hourly. I was thinking if we broke that hourly support, we'd head right down to the bottom of that major support that you see on the daily, and that's exactly what we did, right down to it. So now on the daily, pretty much at support, not quite there, but we're very close. Still have negative divergence, and we're at support. So what I'd be looking for is, as of right now, obviously you can buy at support. It is this thing is still in a bull trend. You can buy at support, but I'd be more looking for an impulsive breakdown of support. So if you're long, you could stay long and then just tighten your stops. I'm not in a trade on this one, but if we get a nice impulsive breakdown of the support, I'd probably be looking for, some sort of a sell signal to short this thing. Where does it go? Well, this thing's run pretty hard, so I suspect there's a gap. You've got this gap right here. I don't know if we'll get there, but we'll say the top of the gap. I think that's, we have a reaction right here, and then the reaction high, top of the gap around 24 bucks ish, and from where we're at now, that's a drop of 58%. EXPI, this one, daily chart, big negative divergence, was forecasting a break in trend. Here's your trend line right here, and there's your break in trend right there. So we broke down, pretty impulsive, looks good. That would be a sell signal, that impulsive break and close below trend, and you got confirming candles. So any kickback rallies, if it wants to kick back up, are opportunities to establish or add to a short. First level of support looks to be right about 36.80, 37, right in there. We break, you probably get a reaction off of that, and if it breaks down from there, you don't really have any support. You got a really big thin zone. This could be a really good short, to be honest. And when a subscriber pointed this out last week. So, if you break that level, you got this thin zone. A thin zone is where there just is like a parabolic move straight up, where there's not a lot of consolidation. So that's a thin zone. Not a lot of trading took place. So if that breaks, probably going to see that just collapse down to about 1954. VRT's a little interesting. You know, yeah, you have negative divergence that's just been extending on the daily. You have to remember, these negative divergences, they can continue to extend for some time, especially on the daily chart. Prices just moved up the trend line. Here's your trend line that I have marked out. Continuing above trend, just kind of grinding along. So till you get that sell signal, it's in an uptrend with negative divergence, which tells me that you're going to get the sell signal. You just don't know when. So, I mean, that's not a reason to sell. It's not, you know, it's not a reason to exit a trade because you have negative divergence. You really have to just continue to let it run until you get that sell signal. As a short trader or someone who's looking to get short, I'm not going to short this thing until I get that sell signal. So that's, you know, taking the other side of the trade. If you're long, I don't see a reason to get out of the trade until you get that sell signal either. All right, AMD, looking at the daily here. Negative divergence on the daily. Nice clean negative divergence too. Just momentum has just been collapsing. And price, you know, this is where you had the negative divergence take hold. Now, you know, we're starting to make lower highs and lower lows. So the price is starting to fall in line with the falling momentum. But, you know, this thing has a big trend line going back to 2016 actually. And you can see on the daily, we've just been walking up this trend line. We're still above it. If we break, here's a gap right here. I would say a breakdown of about 73.50, 73.80. If we get a breakdown there, that would probably bring us down to the support line. And we don't know when that's going to take place. So depending on when we break, I think we'll come down to the support line, the major support line. And then we'll have to see what happens there. Amgen, guys, this one's not super clear to me. I looked at it for a second. We do have negative divergence right there on the daily, and a bigger negative divergence was right here. So this high right here was a divergent high. See the price right there. But when I'm looking at my support lines, it's not that clean. I don't see anything that's super clean. I might have to stare at it a little bit more to pick it up. Maybe it's something like this. Yeah, that looks kind of near. So it's above support. You know, I can kind of draw that out. So, you know, it's coming down to support, maybe around 193, 200, something like that, I think is probable. Doesn't mean it's going to break, though. But if it does, that's your sell signal. Until then, you know, I think it's just kind of uptrending and can come down and tag major support. Okay, guys, that's about all the time I can give you. I've just, you know, spent about close to 30 minutes running through everything I can. Again, pretty quick analysis on a lot of these, so, you know, take them with a grain of salt, do your own due diligence, your own analysis. But that's my read on what you guys posted up. Again, if you're with me this long, leave me a thumbs up. I do appreciate that if you haven't done so far. And I'm going to let you guys